Okay, welcome, friends. Today I am speaking with my dear friend Ellen Hall, who I have known for a couple of decades, which I cannot believe it. We've worked on some projects together, some exciting projects in education. And she is in the process of publishing a new book called Soul Matters in Education, A Secret to Learning and Teaching Children with Joy. And I was honored that Ellen sent me a copy of her manuscript and I was able to read it before it's getting published. And as we were talking, the title might change once a publisher picks it up. But I just wanted to have this conversation with Ellen because there are so many fabulous ideas and insights in it. And you look a little blurry to me. Are you looking blurry to you, or is it just me?
No, I don't look blurry.
Okay,
In my, I
it's
don't
just
know.
me.
Maybe I'm just
So
blurry.
Ellen has been working, like the thing I love about this book is it's so practical because Ellen has worked with children and teens for a long time and started the California Teachers College, was mayor of Ojai, California on the city council, started an alternative high school for teens, and was also the head of school at Oak Grove School, the Krishnamurti School. So maybe you can just tell people a little bit more about why you got into education, why you're so passionate about education, and what inspired you to write this book.
Yeah, thanks. Well, why I was so passionate about education, I think because I was so interested in learning all the time. I started reading actually when I was 3, and I really loved reading and books and all of that. But I had a very hard time in school. I was um, I was constantly being punished for something. Talking, laughing, dancing, doing puppets out of my lunch bag, whatever it was I was doing was always punished. And of course, that was a long, long time ago. That was ancient history when we really treated children in a different way. So, but it's what interested me. What's a good way to educate children, if education at all? I mean, there was so much going on inside of me I wanted to share and bring out, and so little of it got addressed. Well, I remember my parents would say, Ellen, stop reading and do your homework. It's like, it was, it's an interesting thing. So I have a feeling for children in school, how much they're challenged. And it's not all children. Some children really fit into that academic perspective that we champion here in the United States and mainly around the world, but not everyone, and most don't. And so it's what about all those kids? What are they doing in the school? And so
Right.
I got very interested, and I'm quite outspoken, so I didn't really drink the Kool-Aid wherever I went. I observed children, and really, I learned through stories and through observation. So, my observation of children, I would always pull out what it was going on with them. And that's been going on since, I don't know, 40 years. And so, this book is often, I'm in a particular role and doing a specific thing, but what this book is a culmination of all those years, peppered with stories that illustrate the things that I feel need to happen in education for children to give their gift. They're
Mhm.
here. They want to give us what they've come into this planet to give. And I think it could change the world, if we honored the children and their intelligence and their love and their creativity. We would have a different world rather than
I
trying to teach them old stuff.
I agree. I'm actually going to read something from your book because I took some notes when I was reading it. And you said, if we want to have a world with a better economic system, exquisite artistic expression, our effective, less invasive, and less expensive medical care, governments with integrity, science that serves humanity and the planet rather than exploits, we have to protect our newly arrived children so that they can reach adulthood intact and give their gifts to humanity. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So,
Yep.
soul matters. So, I think the first thing I want to clarify for people, because soul is used in so many
Right.
different ways, and I've become acutely aware that there are powers that be that follow a hyper materialistic paradigm and have declared to all the world that souls don't exist and nor does free will. So,
Right.
to me, that's the root of a lot of problems we see. So, soul, can you explain what you mean when you say soul?
Yeah. Just observing humans. There's more to humans than just the physical body and their mind. They have more going on than their brain and their emotions and their physical body. Those things definitely are there and need to be worked with, but there's more. And it's the elevated aspect. And every culture honors and supports that. It's no big mystery. It's not it's not just one religion or one philosophy or any of it. It just is universal that we have you call it a spiritual nature. We have something that goes beyond the material world. And if you are with children and you just really pay attention, they will bring that part of themselves to you. That's the thing that is just so magical. They have insights and compassion and all kinds of things that are soul embodied aspects to our life, and we just don't pay attention to it. We have
Mm-hmm.
a perspective that children are these little bodies, little humans that aren't developed, and we have to put stuff in them to make them be what we want them to grow up to be. And they're coming with these immense gifts, and it just they'll say okay, and they'll do what we want them to do. They'll sit in the classroom year after year, taking in what we want them to take in. And what happens is it's soul crushing. After a while, they just don't even talk about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I put soul in the title. I know it's controversial and people don't want to hear it. They think it has to do with religion and they're critical of that word, but it's the most accurate in my mind of our of, of that aspect of ourself. And I think that we have to honor that in education, and it would be completely different. In fact, especially as a principal, in observing teachers in classrooms, teachers with a spiritual life of their own have a completely different classroom than teachers who don't bring that to the classroom. And the kids are more relaxed, more comfortable, more engaged if they're addressed in their wholeness,
Mm-hmm.
the whole person, the whole being, and the ones that aren't, they're going, what about me? What about this? Like that, or else they're like, oh God, I have to go to school today. There's it doesn't meet them as whole beings unless we see that aspect. And the whole book is full of examples. That's
It
the whole.
is, and that's what I love. And you're careful to say that this goes beyond religion or organized religion. When you talk about the spiritual life of teachers, you're
Yeah,
not saying that they have to necessarily ascribe to a certain religion.
no. But in fact, well, it's kind of better if they don't. But if they do, that's fine too. But, because then without yourself belonging to a specific thing, you have more range. You have more perspective that's broader, and it gives more to the children. So yes, I
Uh,
do it.
right. You have an openness about you.
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
curiosity. So you also talked about your soul being the essence of you, and the thing that really got me is, I mean, the reason that I chose to home educate my kids, or at least educate them without school, was because it was soul crushing for me, absolutely soul crushing.
Me
And I
too.
had the experience of looking into my newborn daughter's eyes when she was a couple days old, and I saw this soul looking out of me with this wisdom, and it like took my breath away. And
Yeah.
I just said, I'm not going to have done to them what was done to me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I do know. I do. I totally get it. Um, one of the one of the things that is part of this whole process of bringing the soul into education is soul to soul communication. It's how do you communicate from your soul to the soul of children? And I learned that in the supermarket because you're standing in line and a lady has her baby up here and you you're looking right in the baby's eyes, and I would say welcome. I didn't talk to them out loud, but I in my mind I would say welcome to earth, hi, how are you? And I get these big smiles, from little 2-month-old babies. Whoa, somebody sees me. It is it is really there. And if you speak to that from the highest part of yourself, from your own heart and soul, it comes right back. You come right back with it. Just so happy that you've acknowledged who they are. And
Oh,
that's
lovely.
that's what happened with your baby. You looked in there, and there was something way beyond that little body.
There was, it was incredible, just incredible. So, where do you think it breaks down? I mean, is it that teachers are not recognizing their own souls, so they cannot see the soul of another? Or, I mean, I know that that kind of breaks us into separate, physical chunks if we're all kind of coming from the same spirit, but you have to have some self knowledge before you can really know about other beings, right?
Yeah, I think we're transitioning in the planet to where we're taking these ideas of philosophies or religious ideas or mystical, metaphysical ideas into our life. But in the past, they've been going to Sunday, going to church or um, the mosque or whatever you're doing on the religious days, and not it doesn't affect your work. And
Mm-hmm.
so what teachers have been trained to do is to address the intellect of the child and to leave the rest up to the parents.
Mm.
That's really what they've been at way in the past. I mean, that is changing. There's a lot of social emotional learning going on in the teacher training, but basically, it doesn't approach the soul. It doesn't approach that arena. That's not where a teacher is supposed to go. So if you look at most teachers in the classroom, observing, which I've done a lot of, they they fall back on what they learned in um, in their teacher training and getting their credential. And there are certain systems, and they have this huge curriculum they have to cover, and here's how they do classroom management, and all of these things are all set up for them. It's all very regulated, and so they lean on that. And if that doesn't work, and they get really frustrated, what I've seen is they resort to what their mother did with them. Just give more homework, or they they do. You can't have it. You can't if you don't do what I want you to. It's that kind of feeling, and they don't like it. They don't like themselves when they do that. But when the other thing doesn't work and they're backed into a corner, they kind of go to what they were raised with.
Hmm.
It's kind of a sad. They don't go deeper in themselves and say, "What am I missing here? How can I address more of the child?" Because the children weren't responsive. Um,
Hmm.
they don't go there as much as they go to um, feeling like I've done everything I'm supposed to do, and it's not working.
Right.
So many teachers are leaving. It's just huge. Um,
Oh, I think the average tenure for a new teacher's less than 5 years,
yeah, yeah,
which is crazy. Well, and you've got so many great stories in your book. I love the story of, I think it's your brother Tim working with a boy that was perceived to be a really bad bully.
yeah.
And I love
Rocky.
that story.
You want me to tell a little bit of that story?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
well, it was Rocky. I love that story too. Tim was working in South Central Los Angeles in a really rough school with all kinds of racial problems, all kinds of other problems, and um, he he got this student called Rocky, and everybody in the school, the principal and the other teachers said, "Oh my God, you're in for it with this kid." And Rocky was very magnetic. He attracted all the kids, and they followed him, whether they liked it or not. They better follow what Rocky wanted. And so Tim, in the beginning of the class, he said, he asked Rocky to come here. So he comes over and he puts his arm around him. Rocky goes, "Oh my God, I don't, what's a teacher putting their arm on me for?" And then he said, "Can you help me? I've got this huge class here. And it's a hard thing to manage. And I'm wondering if you can help me keep order here." And what Tim says is that he saw the potential of leadership in this boy, but Rocky was leading them out of what needed to be done and kind of into his own little club. And this put him in the authority to lead to good. And
Mm.
Rocky took it on. It was what didn't take long, Tim said. I mean, like hours before Rocky was standing up in the classroom, letting everybody know that to do what was on the agenda. And they've become really good friends. I mean, Rocky's grown up, but over the years, he stayed in touch with Tim, and they've become really close friends. It was like a complete turnaround. It was taking Rocky's essential nature,
Mm.
leadership, powerful, and he was very magnetic. He was a magnetic leader, and taking that and making it work for the good. And that's that. When you work soul to soul, that's what you're doing. You're acknowledging what the children have to offer, and you're bringing it forward so it can uplift the rest of the world.
Mm.
Great story.
Right. And I mean, it's kind of reminds me of some of the stories of Jesus, and that he would look beyond people as they were and see who they could be, and treated them as if they had already become those amazing, brilliant, good people. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's what we all need to do. We all need to see that. Well, they say to see the best in people, but I think it's really with children. It's seeing potential.
Mm.
I had one student in where I taught English in high school, and she hated writing. And but when we had literature where we studied together, she would be constantly drawing the story. She'd be illustrating on her. And she said, "I'm so sorry I do that all the time. I really want to learn how to write." And she stayed after school. I helped her a little bit with her writing, but I said, "That's a great skill that you have." She said, "Oh, that's easy. That's nothing. It's drawing." And I said, "No, it's something. And look at these pictures. They really help us understand the story." And I brought it forward to the class. Well, now she owns her own advertising agency in Los
Wow.
Angeles. You know, she's a fantastic graphic designer, and I think it's no, that wasn't all because of me, but I think that's a role of teachers is to actually not try to stuff things into children as much as to draw it out. What's in
Right.
there? And
Yeah. I mean, one thing that struck out to me, I think you talked about this earlier in the book, is that classrooms are spiritually empty by design.
by design, yes, yeah, because there was, well, I think it continues on, but especially in the 90s, there was a big hullabaloo about this. Um, if you bring in spirituality, um, the well, what the more conservative people think that you're um, talking woo woo or new age stuff to their kids who are Christians and go to church, and they don't want that. And if you do it the other way, if you bring in Christianity through prayer and uh, worship and the number of things that are Christian, the more new age people or more liberal in their perspective uh, think you know you're stuffing that thing down their kid's neck, and they don't want that. Just like,
Hmm.
and so you have these two sides that just can't get along, and
Right.
and so what they decided to do was just abandon the whole thing. Make sure it's not available in the classroom. There's no reference to spirituality at all, on any level. And the nice part about this soul thing is that you don't have to teach it. You don't even have to talk about it. All you do is you acknowledge that who the whole child is, and say hello to it. It's not. It can be in any kind of school. Um, it can be in fancy prep schools and Christian schools and alternative schools. It can be all in any place. You could do it in the grocery store. It doesn't. It really is what the world needs. We need to have we need to have that touched in our being, so that we relax our competitiveness and our divisiveness and try
Right.
to each other.
Right. I
So
know. I'm like, excuse me, I have a tickle. Um, so back to, okay, school is soul crushing. And then you talked about the soul is responsive to light, color, and sound, and said the lightness of being is suppressed in an atmosphere of fear. The colors of emotional expression are suppressed by exclusive mental pressure, and the sounds of laughter and joy are silenced in classrooms where vocal expression is not allowed. I just thought that was so beautiful. Light, color, and sound.
yes, exactly. Well, I think the worst of it is the sound. To have these children sitting in rows, and what I know, back up a little. What the soul really is in is it's connected to all.
Mm-hmm.
So children want to be working together. They want, on a soul level, they want to be communicating with each other, working on a project together. And so when you say, if you talk to him, you're cheating,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, but he's helping me. That's where this this whole individualization and also loneliness,
Right.
terrible feeling of exclusion all the time, and not really feeling the warmth of a group and a community takes place in a classroom.
Right.
Year after year after year, thousands and thousands and thousands of children are not allowed to talk to each other. Even if you're sitting in a traditional classroom, you're looking at the backs of all the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you see. And then you see the teacher up there. telling you,
Hmm.
you know, that's that's your vision of the world. Day after day, year after year. You
Right.
don't, and so, that's changing. Thank goodness that's changing a lot in schools, um, where they're giving group work to children, and that comes out. They don't all do the same thing. That's the interesting part. If you give a project to a group of kids, the one who likes to write will write everything down. The other one will figure out how much it's going to cost, and someone else will want to talk about it and tell the parents. And it's like they all take their roles and they create together using their gifts, and that's what we should be encouraging in school. That's
Right.
that's what going to school every day should do.
Yes, I've always thought group projects are really, really magical because, when you go into the real world, I mean, I've always told my daughters, look, in the real world, everything is open book. You know, you're not going to go into the office and have to do something without looking at resources and collaborating with your coworkers. And it's like school's kind of the inverse of life a bit.
I know. Well, a lot of what is set up in schools is very strange to me. With, like, say, junior high school, you're expected to write papers, to write a 5-page, 10-page, 7-page paper on the Industrial Revolution or something. Well, you don't know anything about it. So
Right.
what you have to do is go read stuff. And then if you write what you've read, you're, plagiarizing.
Right.
So where where are you supposed to get information about something you have no personal uh, experience with, except, oh, you're supposed to read about it and then put it in your own words. It's a very convoluted system that doesn't really help you get excited about history and want to learn about things and want to talk with your friends about it. And
Hmm.
it isn't really set up that way. And it can be, if you have a sense, if as a teacher, if you have a sense of that you're with a group of souls,
Hmm.
you want to support the best in them. You can do it. You can do it in a public school with the curriculum. You can do it in a prep school. You can do it in an under
Right.
school, as they call it.
Yeah, it requires a tremendous shift of focus and perspective. I mean, I always thought it was fascinating that, I don't know, is it all like all second graders or something, or they've got a diagram, the like parts of the plant. I mean, I can't think of anything less interesting than that. Why don't you take them out and have them experience plants? Why don't you tell them that plants have the ability to communicate with each other? I
Yeah,
mean, no, it just becomes this flat, dull,
yeah,
standardized activity that they get nothing out of.
but yeah, it's true. One teacher, there's a story in the book about it. He was in a really rough neighborhood teaching, and they decided to have a beautification project at the school. So every class had to decide something they were going to make beautiful. And there, outside his class, there was a half barrel with a kind of scruffy excuse for a tree in it, and they said that they wanted to beautify that. The class decided, and so they had to come up with a name, and they came up with the name Mr. Wonderful.
For the
So
tree.
tree. So then the teacher, they talked about what trees need, about water and fertilizer, and they all had different jobs, and they were going to uh, anyway. This started in September, October, and by the springtime, the tree was full leaves, because it was every day. All the children come by and say, "Good morning, Mr. Wonderful," and different people took turns watering it. And all then the teachers who walked by that were from other classrooms, the kids would say, "Hey, say hi, say hello to here to Mr. Wonderful." It's like they got in a relationship with this tree, and they used it for telling stories. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but it was a simple thing and a small thing, but it's very different than diagramming a plant.
Well, and I bet those children never looked at another tree the same again.
I don't think so.
Now I want to name my tree in my front yard.
Talk to it.
I will.
The thing is, talking to them really makes a difference with plants.
Oh my goodness. And I love, I mean, I don't know if you can share with people working at the Oak Grove School that you were the principal of, but I like this Krishnamurti quote that says, "The purpose of school is for children to flower in goodness." And you put that on your book. And it just, to me, is such a beautiful quote because if you're approaching kids as if they're behavior problems, which
Right.
Tim could have done with Rocky,
Right.
or you're trying to see beyond the behavior to like, what are they needing? What are they wanting? What do they want to express?
Yeah,
So different.
it is really different. Yeah. It's a shift. I would say the main uh I don't know, the main purpose of the book and of my life actually is to help shift the perspective on how you see children. Shift it. Take a look in a different way. How do we see the child? Um, if if we see them like I've said it already, if we see them as little bodies and brains that need training, um, or we see them as whole, complete beings that are uh, in development. They're
Hmm.
they're like a plant, actually. They emerge, and as each part emerges, it's really beautiful and unexpected. Things come up that you don't really. You certainly haven't done it. You know, anyone with two children can tell you that they'll come out differently.
Hmm.
Uh, it isn't really our input necessarily. It doesn't mean that we don't input, but it's this shift that already there's this rich being that is asking us to help them.
Hmm.
Help me give my gift to the world. Help me get the skills I need. Every child needs to learn to really read well, to compute. They need these skills because they can't really give their gift unless they have skilled, unless they be.
Hmm.
And so the education doesn't abandon the traditional education. It's just a different perspective. It's looking at
Right.
them in a different way.
Absolutely. Because and it gets back to from your book again, how we see children in this materialistic age mini me, future superstar, citizen, burden, sinner, toy, duty, body with an empty brain. I was like, yep, choose.
Here's one.
However, we could see the child as a complete, perfect being, body, mind, heart, and soul with a gift to the world.
I would love that shift to really take hold, not just in special places, but
Hmm.
throughout the world. I think, oh, can you imagine what the world would be like?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing to even think about it with all the people coming in their gifts and that they were able to give their gifts. It would
Right.
be amazing. Yeah,
Yes, if they had the first 18 years of their life to really fully explore who they were, what their
yeah,
gifts were, and how they can serve the world with those, versus how are you going to do on a standardized test so you get into college. I mean, what a different world it would be.
it would be really different. Yeah, and it's for some children that haven't gone uh, the traditional way, it is difficult because they think they might have missed something. You know,
Hmm.
I have children that taught that have come back and showed me their babies, and I've gone, I've seen what happens through the years. And it is difficult if you don't, let's say you don't have a college education, only you're a big reader and you have been successful in your business and you raised a beautiful family. You still have this thing, geez, maybe I just didn't quite make it, you know? And it is sad, but it's so pervasive that that's important. That the shift hasn't taken place. It has actually expected, and it's something you have to work with if you decide not to do it.
Well, and I think the challenge with that, having a 16 and a 20-year-old,
Yeah, you're right in it.
is when you look at the societal expectation that everybody goes to college,
Yeah.
even though studies have shown no cognitive gains, and 70% of kids that go to half of the colleges make no more than a high school graduate. So, like, there's no ROI, they're not learning anything. Most people aren't really enjoying it, but there's this expectation from society. And so, once that's the expectation, then that's what backs down into the high school curriculum. Well, to get into college, you need algebra 2, and you need 3 years of this and 4 years of that. And then that determines what you learn in middle school and what you determine, elementary. It's like, rather than us taking these souls, helping them discover their gifts, and then I don't know, you bring James Hillman into your book, who I think he said that when children are 5, and then again when they're around 16, their
Mhm.
purpose emerges. Is that
Mhm.
kind of, I think that's what I
Yeah, he
remember.
does. But I don't know about all that. I mean, my experience has been, I mean, I know I like James Hillman's work,
Right,
but I'm just saying that my experience with all children is that they don't really fit a timeline.
right.
That they have their own emerging, and it's on every individual timeline. You
Mm-hmm,
can't say, oh well, don't teach them to read till they're 7, because they're kids, like me, that want to read at 3, and there are
mm-hmm,
other kids that don't read till 10.
mm-hmm.
It isn't really a timeline about purpose so much. uh, like, okay, I'll give you some examples. This is what I think anyway. I don't know if that's true. It's uh, I'm spending a lot of time with a 3-year-old right now, and he says he's going to be a doctor.
A doctor.
He's going to be a doctor, and he asked me to bend over on my back, and he has a thing like a stethoscope. He's going to listen to my back, and he's going to help. He's going to help me. And it's like he's got this whole thing about being a doctor. Now, whether that happens or not, it's his expression right now. He loves to put band-aids on people. He's like, he's really into being a doctor. Okay, then, but there are other children that I've seen who really don't, they just go along gathering pieces, and they don't really land on something like, I'm going to be a doctor. They don't, I mean, I didn't have any dream. I mean, I
Mm-hmm,
knew that I liked to be hanging out with kids, but I didn't really have, I'm going to be this or I'm going to do that. You just, life comes along, and you add these pieces on, and pretty soon you're clear about what it is you're doing. And
mm-hmm.
some people don't have, I don't know, all these books about, let me help you find your purpose. Well, I don't, there's a lot of books,
Yeah, yeah.
teachers,
It's
and people feel lost because they don't have a purpose. But what are they doing? What's right in front of them? What is it that they love to do? Who is it
right.
that needs a telephone call right now? That's that you move with life with an open heart, and, and a soul, and you move right into where you need to be. It doesn't need
Mm.
to, I don't, this is my opinion. I don't know. That might be a little bit, um,
Well,
on
I
the
mean, I
edge,
think the realization that's come to me is I feel like I'm this, here's Caprice and making all the decisions moving through the world, but
right?
life kind of lives me.
That's
If I
right.
surrender to it and trust and listen to my internal guidance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You don't
But
really
that's hard.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's hard to do if you've been forced to sit still and be quiet and not to pay attention to your internal guidance. I mean, I don't know if you lose that connection, but maybe you don't
Mm.
trust it.
Yeah, well, you have to, I watch the kids in high school at the time of year when they have to apply to colleges,
Hmm.
the senior class, no, yeah, even the junior class. And there's such panic and agitation and worry because here they are, 17, 18 years old, and they have to decide what they're going to be in their whole life now. They have to decide
Hmm.
their total direction. They don't know. They don't have any clue. And they get so nervous. They're really upset about it. They have to pick a major. It's just it's not saying, what are your interests right now? What can,
Right.
yeah, it's more like saying, and what is your career going to be? And does that career make any money? Anyway, it's a difficult time. It's a difficult time to make that kind of decision.
It is. I mean, I'm thinking about my 16-year-old who was having a conversation with a friend of hers, and the friend said, "Well, what are you going to do in college?" And my daughter was like, "Well, I love literature, and I love theater, and I love science, and I love philosophy, and I love psychology. So I don't know. I might try and go somewhere where I can combine it all together." To which, the friend said, "Well, you're never going to make any money with that. You should be an accountant." Because her friend has already decided she wants to be, I think, a coroner or something. It's hard. I mean, yeah, there's no, even, I'm constantly changing the work I'm doing as I evolve and grow, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you're staying alive. You're really interested and passionate about things, and you always share it with others. It's always coming out of you. And that's your gift, that you're giving it. That's how if we were all doing that, it would be a different world. It would definitely be a different world.
Yeah,
How many people have you met that have said, well, my dad really wanted me to be an attorney like him. But what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to ride my motorcycle across Europe and paint. It's kind of
right.
so many people, and then they're in their later part of their life, and they feel like they've missed out. They haven't lived their life
Hmm.
because they've followed this course,
Right.
course of this is what I have. I have the ability to do this, and this is what makes money. And I don't I don't have anything against making money. I
Hmm.
not at all. It's just if that's your motivation for what you put your life force into, then it probably will not be satisfying to your soul.
That's very true. Like your soul knows where to put your life force based on your gifts, your talents, your calling. And I've talked to so many 20 somethings who are in jobs they hate, but they had to take them to pay off their college debt, which
Yeah,
is kind of
terrible.
ironic, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think there's real hope for the future of education because um, so many so many people who've really walked a line and gone through traditional training to be a teacher and have tried to do it in the classroom and felt its inadequacy are leaving, and others are there's so many parents who are starting different kinds of alternative schooling, working in groups with their children. It's just there's a whole range of possibilities and potentials for that, and even communities, school districts have, because they had so many people drop out, they can create a homeschooling program that supports homeschoolers so that they can keep kids in the school district. I mean,
Hmm.
all this is happening, which wasn't happening when I was in school, or even when my children were in school. And I can see that this very structured, brittle education system is crumbling,
Mm-hmm.
and not for everybody. Not, I mean, there are students who love it. They love
Mm-hmm.
competition. They love just the academic aspect. They want to do something that requires a PhD for their life. They're on the track, and that should stay there. That
Right.
potential should be there for those children. But to force everyone into that system, and then punish them if they don't do well, is
Right.
is very. It has to go, and I think it is. I think it's crumbling. And what the book does is it just gives examples specifically to teachers and parents about how, just an example of how someone else has survived making the transition in how they are with children. It kind of opens up a possibility. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Right.
yeah,
Well, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the parents, making the decision for their child.
yeah.
So, if there were like one thing that you would tell a parent to do that would really help their child to flourish and maybe help the relationship they had with their child, what would it be?
Listen.
Well, it doesn't have to be one, it could be several.
Yeah, no, listen. That's the one
Oh,
thing I
listen.
would ask them to listen. Um, one thing that's been very effective, and for me to share with people, and I get a lot of feedback about it, is to ask children, "Why did you come to Earth?" And you'd think, well, that's kind of an obtuse question to ask a child. They all answer. It's really about listening to that answer. If they're younger and not as verbal, they might show you, but it's listening to what the children have to say, listening
Mm,
to what it is they want, listening to what brings them joy. How do they feel fulfilled? That um, that listening, and then of course responding, I think is the biggest shift. Instead of talking at them,
hmm.
telling them, telling kids. After a while, even my own son did this to me. I mean, he's 55 now, but he did this. Used to get earaches, and I'd say, why are you getting an earache all the time? And he said, I'm tired of listening to you. And that was when he
Children
was
are
little, 4.
so, oh no.
So, I went, ooh, okay. And it's, to focus more on listening to them
Right.
than on telling. That would be the biggest one. And then
Yeah.
you'll hear the soul. You'll hear the soul speak when you listen.
Is there an age when children forget why they came to Earth? Is there an age where they'll say, I don't know?
I think um, I think all the way through it's a possibility. Um, you know, depends on whether they've been encouraged or not.
Mm-hmm.
But when the little ones, they're the ones that will answer you right away.
Mm-hmm.
The little 3, 4, 5 year olds. I think by 7, then they're starting to look at, what their friends like, and, what it's like on the school bus. And, they have a different agenda. And then back into the adolescence, they're struggling with identity. They want to know who they are. And some of them really go deep into who am I? And
Mm-hmm.
they can do it too, but not as many as the little kids will answer that question. Now, I've been
Right.
asking that question to children for 50 years. So I
Wow.
get a lot of answers. No, I'm not making it up.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember like one thing that really struck me after reading your book was I just thought, wow, like if every superintendent and teacher read this book, bullying would cease to exist. There would be no bullying.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
I mean, because in the book you give not only, the overall approach and shifting the perspective, but some specific techniques that teachers have used that just shut bullying down. And I was like, wow, I mean, it's possible, but it needs to be really dealt with directly.
Yeah, and the culture is forcing us to deal with it, with all the school shootings. And, I think about this. If a kid is so miserable that he comes to his school and kills a bunch of people and then kills himself, that's a suffering child. And there's
Mm-hmm.
more and more of them. And why do they go to the school?
Right.
Why don't they go to the mall?
Yeah.
They just want to shoot up people. Or why don't they go to a church? Or why don't they go to a rec center? Why do they go to school? Because they're bullied at school. They've been treated so poorly. They're so furious. They were willing to take their own life.
Right.
And it's serious. It's a serious thing that we're facing.
Well, and I think, we also haven't mentioned how many children are on prescription drugs
Right.
for anxiety, depression, you know, learning disorders. I've
Right.
got an opinion about that. But I think we can definitely say you can see the health of a society by looking at how well the children are doing. And I would say we're not doing so great.
I think we're doing better.
You
I,
think we are?
I do. I really think it has improved since, um, you know, uh, the 50s, 60s, 70s. I think we've improved in that area, but it's so,
Mm,
but not. They've also created more difficulties, especially with pharmacology.
hmm
That's created a lot of difficulties, and the materialism. When I think, this is after World War II, there was a lot of financial challenges for most families. Most families had a challenge. We were, and and so there was a more compassion for that. And now there's such uh, affluence. My grandson, every time we can't find something, he says, Nana, just buy a new one. That's his answer to anything that gets lost is to go buy a new one. What?
Right.
I, I never thought that. I can't imagine that I thought that as a kid. And
Right.
I can't be saying, well, this is what happened when I was a kid. The whole world is a changed world, but I feel like there's so many innovations and there's so much reaction to what has been the standard that we're going to do it. We're going to make a new one. What we do, though, how long it takes, and what we do depends a lot on teachers and parents, and whether they can see this wholeness. It's and draw it out. See this the goodness in children, and draw that forward, and help them express it.
hmm
That'll make the difference. Yeah.
I agree 100%. I do not think you can find a solution until you've diagnosed the problem correctly and saying we need more money or different standards or different
Yeah,
tests or different curriculum. That's completely missing the point.
I think so. I think so because the kids are unhappy.
They're unhappy, yeah. And they're not
Unhappy.
really learning.
So, I don't want to generalize and say kids aren't learning. And I also want to just do shout out here to teachers. I've
hmm
never seen a harder working group of people in my life than teachers. They really struggle. They're not, they're given this curriculum that they have to cover, that it's impossible to do, and they're given a lot of restrictions that make actually responding with their gifts as teachers impossible. And then they have to go home and correct papers, and then they have their own family, and they have to make dinner, and they have to take care of their own kids doing homework, and then they get back at school early in the morning, and they have all these pressures. And everyone wants to add something to the school curriculum, like first aid or, many, many things. And I think they're just completely exhausted. And they
Hmm.
work so hard. They try so hard. Most all teachers start in the profession for a love of children and wanting the world to be better. But
Right.
they're shoved into this system that is not very helpful. Anyway, I didn't want to go on without giving them a
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because, as we said in the beginning, I mean, that is why you were starting the California Teachers College
right.
was to support teachers in a new way.
Right.
And we just found that the timing isn't right, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen at some point because I think if we trained teachers in a different way, it would be a different school would look completely different.
Mhm. Would have to. And they always being a teacher was always complaining about the administration. And the administration's always complaining about the teachers. And the parents are always complaining about the administration. And the parents are always complaining about the teachers. It's like a triangle, and it's nobody's fault. It's a system that doesn't serve children because it
Right.
doesn't treat the whole child.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be remedied. Teachers are secretly doing it in classrooms all around the world.
Right. Right.
So anyway, what a lovely time to talk with you. Are we getting good?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
enjoyed this conversation, and I'm glad that you are feeling so optimistic because I think people tend to lose hope rather than using their power of imagination and creation to create something new.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
I've seen enough of it done. That's one reason I like the book is because it has so many examples of success based on
Okay.
principles and exactly, how you might try to do it yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then I look forward to this book being published in 2023. And I know you at this point don't have a website, but as soon as it is published, it will be on my website,
Okay.
soulagency.org.
All
So,
right. Yeah.
all right.
Thank you, darling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.